Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. Appreciate everyone joining us today. Have the honor of having a special guest and a friend with me today. He is Tim Echols, and I'll bring him on in just a couple of minutes, but just want to remind you as you join us to be sure and let us know where you're joining from. And sorry about that, having some technical difficulties here. But let us know where you're joining from. Feel free to share comments and questions as we go along. And then wanted to just remind you that from our vantage point, we see wisdom as a journey. And that journey starts with gaining knowledge. And once we gain knowledge, however that is, we then move on in the process to understanding. That's based on experience and our what we begin to apply to our lives and use day to day. And then the last step in the journey is stepping into wisdom. And the big key to stepping into wisdom at that point is that we begin to see things from a much larger perspective, even outside of ourselves, and be able to make decisions beyond just thinking of how it affects us. And then for those of us that have a spiritual bent, we like to look at it as seeing things through God's eyes and making choices accordingly. Welcome, Panda. Appreciate you being here from India. And Paul, good to have you. Been a while and glad to see you joining us today. And so without any further ado, going to introduce Mr. Tim Echols. He's our commissioner at the Public Service Commission here in Georgia, and more importantly, a servant leader. So let's bring Tim on board.
Good morning, Tim. Hey, it's great to be with you on the MLK Jr. holiday here in the United States, a day that has become, Kevin, a traditional community service day. And I know on better weather days, and I'm in North Georgia as you are, on better weather days, I have organized trash cleanups and park cleanups and other things. It's a little tricky out there getting people out today, but it is a great tradition, not something we should just save for one day out of the year, obviously, but it is traditionally now a public service holiday.
Very good. Yeah. Welcome, Aaron. Glad to have you with us. And so, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
You know, I want to kind of kick it off following up with how you kind of describe wisdom and understanding, Kevin. It reminds me of a great book I want to recommend to everyone called The Making of a Leader by J. Robert Clinton. And this book is really a case study on a lot of different Christian leaders' lives, from Billy Sunday to Watchman Nee, Dawson Trotman, some of the old timers who really built ministries that are still in existence, working in the U.S. today. But the last kind of stage for a leader's life is something called convergence. And it's where everything kind of comes together. It's the life lessons, the tests that you have, the successes that you've had, the relationships that you've built. And Clinton says in this book that not everyone hits convergence, leader, but it is the place that you eventually want to get to, where everything kind of comes together. And I'm 61 now, and I like to feel like I am in that convergence stage. And it is a great feeling to be able to have some successes under your belt, to be mentoring people, and to have people, coming to you for advice, leveraging your contacts and experience for them, and helping them be successful, almost passing the baton, if you will, Kevin.
Remind us of the book name again.
Yeah, it's called The Making of a Leader.
Okay.
By J. Robert Clinton, and it is a book that that has. I mean, it's a technical book because it's really just going through case study after case study with his theory, and he's got this theory on stages in leaders' lives, and he is using modern day and leaders that have obviously passed away, Billy Graham, for example, and he's showing you how all of these great leaders kind of fit into his scheme of how leaders develop in their life. And so it's a fantastic book that I'd recommend to anyone out there that wants to be a leader, that feels like they're on their way to leadership. And I've spent most of my 30s and 40s building the Teen Pack Leadership School. That's not a brick and mortar school, but it's an experience for high school kids and kids as young as 8 years old to go to their state capital, wherever they live in America. We're in all 50 states, and go through this program to understand how the legislature works, to understand how the judicial branch works, to see how the media impacts public policy, how lobbyists impact public policy. And I created this program in 1993. I wrote the curriculum for it. You can see more at teenpact.com, T-E-E-N like teenager, pact, P-A-C-T.com. But it was really designed to introduce kids to the General Assemblies, which is a much easier political process to get involved with than going to Washington, D.C. I wanted them to see that these part-time legislators are just like their mom and dad, that they're just citizens out there who have decided to serve for a time period, and for these kids to have some kind of ambition to impact public policy for good. Hopefully, ultimately, getting involved themselves in some way other than just voting. I mean, voting is kind of the lowest bar for getting involved, as far as I'm concerned. I like to see people get engaged, get the cell phone number of their legislator, of their public service commissioner, be texting with these people, build relationships so that when something comes up that you do care about, you already have the relationship built and you don't panic and wonder, oh, how come I can't ever get my opinion through? Well, you've waited a little bit late. Now's the time to build a relationship with your elected official.
Relationship goes a long way, definitely. A couple of more folks have joined us. Shona, glad to have you, Shona. And Rick, appreciate you being here today. And Suzette, appreciate you being here. And Tim, we've got, let's see, one question came up. Is Clinton and author of the book C-L-E-N-T-O-N?
C-L-I-N-T-O-N.
Okay, it is traditional. Okay. Thanks for that question, Aaron. Appreciate it. And Paul says he's going to get a copy of the book. And others have echoed that they are looking at convergence themselves. So that's an interesting term used in that perspective, and appreciate that. Also, we have Hawk, as we call him, from Europe, over in Europe area. He's a regular. And so talk a little bit about this idea of the getting people involved in public service, because one of the things I know that you have been involved in public service for a while now. And one of the things I challenged people in the post was, maybe you should get involved. So share a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah. So community service is a pretty broad term, right? We can go out, pick up trash today somewhere, and we're doing community service. Public service, we traditionally think about is when someone's going to serve the public on an ongoing way for a period of time. So that maybe you start out by getting appointed, like my friend John. I was just in Augusta last week speaking to the Augusta Uptown Kiwanis Club, and my friend John has been appointed to the Canal Authority, right? So he's a board member, unpaid, for the Canal Authority. They have monthly meetings, and he had me over to the Canal Authority, and they still generate electricity with the canal in Augusta using water and penstocks and turbines. And he was interested in knowing how they could better utilize the 700 kilowatts of electricity they generate on a continual basis. And so that's a form of public service, right? So it may be like you live in Swanee, Kevin, and a lot of times a city. I know I got my start in Norcross, just down Buford Highway. My first role in the city of Norcross in 1991 was serving on the mosquito committee. we had a mosquito problem in Norcross, and they were looking at various fixes, and so each city council person got to appoint a citizen to be on the mosquito committee. And one of the unintended consequences is I learned a lot about mosquitoes that I didn't know. You always do this when you serve on these things, but mosquitoes love water, right? Any kind of, like old tires, old hubcaps, any kind of just still water, even puddles that are there. And it turned out that one of the city council people, her husband, had all these old tires and hubcaps in the back of their yard. Okay. I mean, it was like thousands of them. And we determined actually that the source of the mosquitoes for Norcross was the backyard of one of the city council.
Oh my.
Oh my goodness. It wasn't the conclusion that they wanted us to come to. But when you look in if you have a hubcap and you just leave it out in your yard full of water, you can see the larva, the mosquito larva in there. It's like a breeding ground for the mosquitoes. And you can either put some chemical in each of those little bodies of water, or better yet, just flip them over and empty them out.
Get rid of the water.
But old tires are notorious because it's hard to get the water out of them, because you can flip them over and water in them, not to mention snakes sometimes. But so recycling old tires through a group like Liberty Tire Recycling and making playground mats out of them, or they're even putting them in pavement now. And we've got some places in Georgia that actually some biomass facilities, one down at West Rock down in Dublin, that actually uses 10% tire shreds to generate electricity down there, along 90% wood chips. So there's lots of uses for it, but the worst possible use for an old tire is to have it sitting in your yard, because mosquitoes carry diseases and they love to breed in tires.
Okay. Well, and you never know when you start on a mosquito committee where it might lead to. Hawk actually shared an interesting insight. He's from Norway, and he says in Norway we have a specific term for this called dugnad. I hope I pronounced it correctly, Hawk. Unpaid work you do for the common good. Yep, that's what it's about. And I know here in Georgia, our public servants get paid not enough for the investment of time. I know a number of our legislators, and I appreciate that they truly are public servants, because what they do is to give of themselves to help take care of us. And the opportunities, like you said, are remarkable, because you may have to start off on the mosquito committee, but that opens doors. Let me welcome a couple of other folks. Zaid, one of our regulars, glad to have you. Gabe, glad to have you as well. So, uh, talk a little bit about your journey as a public servant. Okay, obviously you're not still, I don't think you're still on the mosquito committee, are you?
No, I'm not on the mosquito committee. From there, I helped a friend get elected to the Norcross City Council the next year. There was an open seat. This guy was the most unlikely person to ever get elected. He was a hairdresser in Buckhead, curly permed hair, Spanish first name, Polish last name, British accent, had been trained in London as a hairdresser, immigrated to the U.S. through the Bahamas, where he sold illegal drugs, and wound up here, becoming a Christian, getting married, having a family, and was just a great guy. Humble, quiet, servant-hearted. And when this seat opened, me and some guys in Old Town Norcross, got together and said we need to get a person in this seat that that has our values that we like. Let's try to take advantage of this. And as we went around the room, all of us were disqualified in some way. I hadn't lived in the city long enough. One of the guys worked for the city. One of the guys, his wife said, "No way can you run." One of the guy had a new pharmacy job. And then we got to the hairdresser, and and my buddy that worked for the city said, "Andre, it includes free health insurance." He said, "I'll do it." So Andre was not a gregarious, outgoing person. He was just quiet and meek. And we devised a strategy because I discovered that only about 600 people voted in Norcross. So that means that we only needed 301 votes. And so I bought the list from Gwinnett County. You're able to, if you are representing a candidate, you can buy the voting list. And I actually wanted to know in the last 3 Norcross City elections who actually voted. And then we got a little group of people together at my kitchen table. We took all those lists and we compared, the 90, I guess it was the 91 list with the 89 list with the 87 list, and highlighted any person that had voted in every election. And once we determined who the most loyal voters were, I said, "Andre, you've got to go visit these people." And so we launched this effort for him to go out and introduce himself to these most loyal Norcross voters. And in the end, we got second in the general. There were 4 candidates. We were running against the town plumber, who had been 6 terms in office.
Okay.
The guy that owned the train depot, who had been in for a couple of years, and then another former councilman. But in the runoff, we beat the town plumber by 14 votes, and my guy became a council member. And I think after that experience, I felt like, you know what? If Andre can become a city council member, any human being can get elected to office. And not only did he serve with distinction, but in the next election, he got elected without my help because he had done such a good job there on the council. Just such wisdom to, as we think about this show today, he really used a lot of wisdom in helping that city solve some of its problems and grow. And Norcross is, of course, a fantastic city today.
Sure. Well, in fact, one of the earlier comments from Panda, one of our participants, his life is colorful because we're connected with gaining wisdom. And I definitely, your description of the process you went through and who was involved, definitely indicates that life is colorful, and that's a good thing. Want to welcome Ed Mario. Glad to have you as well, one of our regulars. And so I want to, if you would, share a little bit about some of the wisdom you've gained, because part of what I'm trying to get my audience to do is to make a conscious effort to seek wisdom. You know, much of what I talk about is principles out of the Bible, and it tells us to seek wisdom more than gold or gems, or in our current vernacular, money. So tell us a little bit about your intentional seeking of wisdom, because I know you have.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with money, nothing wrong with gold, nothing wrong with material possessions. Obviously, God can bless you in many ways, and some people are blessed financially. I think about some of my friends that have the gift of giving, who God has blessed immensely, and they're so generous. In fact, some of those people really helped me grow that ministry, Teen Pack, in those early days. So I am very grateful that God does bestow riches on some people. Others, others God gives other gifts to. And I think first of all, I think we need to recognize that it is God who has a destiny for our lives. And we need to be comfortable with whatever God's will for us is. We may think that we want this thing or that thing, but God may have other plans. So I think first, one of the things that we always need to be doing as we seek wisdom is to be seeking God's will for our life. I had someone on LinkedIn the other day from Nigeria say, I'm a diesel mechanic and I want to come to America. And that's his goal. And I was giving him some advice on how he might apply to Peterbilt or Freightliner or some of the big companies, but it may not be God's will that he come here. It may be God's will that he stay there and minister to people. There's nothing wrong with setting great goals. I remember sitting with Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A. I was 17 years old, high school senior. I had just been given the Atlanta Airport Rotary Club Student of the Year Award. Mr. Cathy was a member of that club. He caught me after the meeting and asked me to come to his office. And his office was in Hapeville, Georgia, just around the corner from the Atlanta Airport Hilton, just a couple of streets over, actually. And I went over there, followed him over. I had a little 67 Chevrolet pickup truck, free on the tree and no air condition, and followed him in one of those big chicken Lincoln Continentals that he had at the time with a chicken logo on the side. And he gave me a couple of sets of cassette tapes that day. Zig Ziglar. These are still available, by the way. Zig, Z-I-G, Ziglar, Z-I-G-L-A-R. Zig is passed, but his See You at the Top series is available out on Amazon. And Truett gave me a set of these cassette tapes, and me in my 17-year-old silliness, I said to him, "Sir, all I have is an 8-track tape player in my truck." And he apparently had heard this before. I called his assistant and they opened his closet. I was looking over there, this storage closet. All of these Radio Shack tape recorders in there. It's like the thing was full of them. And he handed me one of these old-fashioned Radio Shack cassette recorders where you kind of pop the lid up. And he said, now you can listen to these tapes. And then he also gave me a set of Charles Stanley supernatural success tapes. Both of these men, Zig Ziglar and Charles Stanley, of course, are Christians. Both they come at life a little bit differently. Zig Ziglar is a motivational speaker, but I couldn't put his material down. It just it it was Truett Cathy's way of mentoring me. And so I would say to those of you out there seeking wisdom that you want to find a mentor, but the mentor doesn't necessarily have to spend a lot of time with you. Collectively through my life, I probably only spent 2 hours with Truett Cathy in my entire life, but he had a great impact on me from not only giving me those tapes and encouraging me to listen to them, but as other opportunities came forward, he gave me an opportunity to help other people with some of the charity projects that he was doing. So I think that being mentored is an important part of gaining wisdom, Kevin, and that can come from a direct mentor relationship, or it can come from being mentored by King Solomon through the book of Proverbs, right?
Yes.
So if you're not reading a proverb per day, I would suggest that that's a great place to begin to find wisdom, is as you read these proverbs each day to kind of look and ask yourself, am I living my life according to the wisdom of what the Bible says is the wisest, the wisest man that ever lived, or am I doing things differently? So you do want to compare your way of living with something that's greater. It's kind of like if you were trying to determine if a $20 bill was counterfeit, right? You're going to compare it to the original. You're not going to look at it and say, oh, that looks nice, that's crisp, that smells right. No, you're going to compare it to something. And I think that's always good for us to do, is to look at how we're living, how we're thinking, the habits that we have, and compare it to the way we should be living. And one of the best sources to determine that, not the only source, but certainly one of the best ways, is to compare it to biblical wisdom.
Definitely. Well, Hawk makes a comment. He says, wisdom is gold. We said it's better than, but it is gold. And I want to welcome a couple of folks that have joined. Karen has joined us, as well as Cena. Glad to have you guys. And then Lee, just so you'll know, as a public servant in the political world, that Lee has actually declared himself as a candidate for president in the U.S. And you might want to check out his profile. Pretty insightful and interesting. Lee's a regular with us. And comment from Suzette, and I haven't figured this out on live stream, why some people on LinkedIn show up as LinkedIn user on live stream, but this is Suzette, and she makes a comment: as I go through my stages of transformation, thinking as God does is proving to be very necessary and rewarding. No doubt about it. And let's see here. Hawk offers, what would Jesus do, which we spoke about last time. Why not have the best as your idol or example? Definitely. So how do you balance being a public servant? Because I know, again, here in Georgia, our public servants aren't paid a whole lot. Definitely not career politicians, because there's no career involved. So tell us how you balance that with, I know you're very big on family, and that's a high priority for you. So how do you balance some of that?
Yeah, that's a challenge. And I am full-time. I've been on the commission full-time for 11 years. And, the pay obviously isn't as much as if I were working out in the private sector or something like that. But it is a lifelong ambition that I've had. And so I do really enjoy this role in serving, regulating energy with my colleagues here in Georgia, and having the bully pulpit of a statewide constitutional officer. So I'm one of about 13 constitutional officers here in Georgia, meaning that the state constitution calls for my position and it can't be eliminated by the governor. So it's not an agency appointment. It is a position elected statewide here in Georgia by the entire state, or those that that choose to vote.
Very good. Welcome, Hiram. Hiram is a veteran friend of mine out of California, so he's up real early this morning. Glad to have you with us. And Hawk offers, just for those that are interested, that the reason some people show up as LinkedIn user is privacy settings. So just as background there. So tell us a little bit, with not wanting to get too personal or invasive, but tell us a bit about your family. I know you're very active in your church community, and that you are helping a lot of people beyond what are your so-called duties.
Yeah, that's a really important piece of this for me, Kevin, is it's not just to do the job that I was elected to do, but to have some value add there. So as a person that follows Jesus Christ, obviously, the things that Jesus, said was important, I really try to make those things important to me. So helping the poor, for example, that's why I did the homeless trash pickup in Atlanta with some guys. We got about 20 homeless people to join us, paid them $10 per trash bag to go out and gather trash, and gave them gloves and a vest, and tried to be encouraging to them. So obviously helping the poor, obviously, as you look out across our state, human trafficking is a problem, a blight. I created the Unholy Tour. Has nothing to do with my job. I don't regulate, human trafficking or anything like it. But in the evening, I, thanks to Samson Trailways bus service, they donate a bus every year for me to do this in various places, and I get legislators and their spouses onto the bus, and then I have human trafficking experts, people that fight human trafficking, and law enforcement, nonprofit, and we go out to the very worst places in Atlanta where some of this is happening, and we take them on a bus. We don't get out, but as we pull up to the back of a truck stop or the back of an extended stay hotel, the back of a strip club, back of a karaoke bar, believe it or not. Then we tell stories to these legislators about what's happening in these places from time to time, and try to help them see that they're in a position as a lawmaker to do something about it, whether that's providing more funding to the GBI or the Attorney General's office, or for recovery purposes, or whether a law needs to be beefed up and changed. One of the laws that we have that still hasn't been changed is pimping, right? It is a felony to pimp a minor, but it's not a felony to pimp another human being. And so that, I don't know that will ever change, but we have been able to get the felony, moved down to pimping minors. It used to not be a felony.
Wow. Okay.
It is now. You cannot have relations, with a minor, and it not be considered either statutory rape or human trafficking. And so, but according to the Carter Center, we have, over 100 kids sold per night in Atlanta for sex. And certainly we want to see that number come down, eliminated, but there's a demand out there, and folks that are on our call today who live in India or live in Amsterdam or live in other places, you know what I'm talking about, that it's an issue. And, we just need more people thinking about it.
Well, Tim, something I appreciate about you, although you are a political figure and work with our state government and all, I like the fact that when you look at a problem, you don't automatically look for a political or legal solution. because quite often I think that causes us to lose the concept of public service, community service, and so on, and that our solution is not generally best accomplished by government intervention, better that it's community, which kind of leads me into a question, or leads a that one of our audience comment or ask, and should only people elected to office be considered public servants, or can we consider those helping and working at a church, hospital, etc., as a public service as well? You want to talk to that?
Yeah, I think it's just semantics, but you're absolutely right. That's public service. I was just at the top of our stream today, which is kind of defining when we think about public service, what that typically is. It usually involves being appointed or elected to a position, but clearly, anyone that's out there serving their community, you're doing public service. And there's a lot of people that are going to go out this afternoon in Atlanta and do various good deeds.
Mm-hmm.
And those good deeds may involve picking up trash, serving food to people, painting something inside. I mean, it's going to be thousands of projects. And Kevin, to your point, I think nonprofit organizations are way more effective at giving leadership to community service / public service than government, because these nonprofits have a heart. I really don't see government having a heart. And I don't know that government's role is to be doing charitable things necessarily. I mean, I swore an oath to the state constitution, right? So in my job as a commissioner, my loyalty involves that state constitution and following it. But when I put my Christian hat on, which I wear pretty much all the time anyway, that involves different things, right? So maybe how I use my money, what little I have, or how I use that extra time that I have, or how I use that. What's more important for me, my contacts, my influence. How am I using those? And so, I mean, we've got people from all over the world, that are owned today, and in wherever you're at, there are things that need to be done, and you don't have to wait on anyone on some of these things to do it. You can go out on your own and probably not get any credit and go out and do something great today. And I would suggest that we all do that, and not necessarily worry about credit, because you know what? God sees your actions, and He will reward you in His own way, and you don't have to worry about getting credit for something.
Well, and Tim, I think about that one of the benefits for doing exactly what you described, and one of the values or credits in doing so, is those are opportunities to truly gain wisdom, because we see the world in a different perspective, and to see and that's especially what we see around us that maybe we don't know. Not something that is just on the news or whatever, but something we see in our own world and begin to get a new perspective, and drives us. And interesting, Hawk shares that talking about human trafficking, it's horrible. As a social worker since 1983, it sickens me. Even in Norway, this is a problem. So, yeah, it's a much larger problem. And one of the things that we can do is work through community organization churches to address this problem, because I know there are a lot of ministries out there to help people that's caught up in it and help address it in a positive way. Let's see here. Paul comments, I've been involved in supporting those impacted by human trafficking. and it's awful what people will do to others, without a doubt. And let's see here. Wow, we a lot of people in our audience agreeing that human trafficking is bad news, and so definitely support for battling that. And again, a great way to serve, even without being on official committees and so on. In fact, Erin is more of a creative soul, and she says, I've started writing a musical on child abuse to build awareness back in 2014, and she's going to potentially revisit that. We have let's see, I believe this is Shauna. Shauna says, I volunteer at a nonprofit cancer center one day a week. That they truly make a difference in local communities. Yeah, that, to me, that's the heart of public service right there. And Lee comments, interesting comment coming from a potential president or a potential president, is that it's not government's job to be benevolent. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that's where our churches and our community organizations become key. And let's see here. I'm just making sure, I'm trying to catch up with some of the comments.
Sure.
Don't want to miss out. So tell us a little bit about your pact that you created and getting young people engaged in, I'm assuming it's not just government that you're encouraging them getting engaged, but rather as citizens. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, certainly I created Teen Pack in an effort to help them understand wisdom, justice, even our state seal here in Georgia, has 3 pillars. Our state seal has 3 pillars: wisdom, justice, and moderation. Right. So as you think about, and it represents, by the way, the 3 branches of government, right? So wisdom for the lawmakers, right? Justice for the judicial branch, and moderation from the executive branch that has the ability to enforce. And so I wanted kids to see that they should be engaged in the legislative process by getting to know their legislators. And I found that a lot of young people, particularly college young people, were a little bit cynical about politics, even adults. And if all you do is watch cable news channels, you're going to be cynical, because all these channels are, I'm not saying there's no value and you shouldn't watch them. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they really play on people being cynical. And if you just feast on that and you don't have any relationships with some of these public servants who are actually doing good things, then you wind up thinking everybody's just like all these Washington, D.C. people, because these cable news folks are really focused on federal politics. And I really wanted kids to begin in their own state capital. And forget Washington for a minute. Let's just start where you live. And really, we challenge them to go back home and get to know their county commissioners, their city council people. That's a fantastic place to begin. Those just joining may not have heard my story about helping Andre get elected to the Norcross City Council, but getting elected to a city position is the easiest way to enter electoral politics. Is starting small. I appreciate Lee putting himself out there and running for a big position. It's harder. And I'm sure he's prayed about that. I'm sure God's given him specific wisdom and direction for what he should be doing. But the average person that says, I think I want to get elected and serve in this way, my advice to them is to find an open seat, either a county commission open seat or a city open seat, and begin there. But even before that, it really is good if you've been out there serving, doing community service, public service, where people have gotten to know you and you have a little bit of a brand, if you will, a brand for serving. I didn't run until I was 49 years old, and I'd already built a national youth ministry. So I wanted to run for office in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s, but I was growing a family, right? So I have 7 children. Wendy and I have been married almost 40 years, and it just wasn't the right time. And doing something, neglecting your family, and losing your spouse or your family is not wisdom. Let me just go ahead and tell you that right up front, that there is no reason, other than physical abuse, that you would want to lose your family. That is your first obligation, in my opinion. I know there are extenuating circumstances probably out there, and there probably is an exception to the rule or whatever. But in general, taking care of your family, growing your family, training up your kids in wisdom. That's, if you're going to get married and you're going to have a family, that's your first duty. And politics to me became something that I was going to have to do later. And when the seat opened for the Georgia Public Service Commission, when I was 49, I decided to take advantage of that. And I won the primary, then the primary runoff, and then the general. I had 3 elections to get to this seat initially, spent about $100,000 to be able to gain the seat.
Right. It's an investment, time, resources, everything. Welcome, Dr. Sharma. Appreciate you being here. And Dr. Sharma is one a person I work with in a education entity that's actually international. It's International Institute of Influencers, and it's a growing quickly, trying to help our youth opportunity to learn and all. And one of the things that is going on in the comments along the way, and maybe you can share some insight because you're walking this, is balancing where government starts, where it stops, and where community service, personal responsibility, and those things pick up. How do you balance that? Because I know you do quite a remarkable job of it, Tim.
Yeah. I had a young person ask me the other day if I thought that government should be involved with regulating, entities like I do. And I said, it really doesn't matter what I think about this, because the current fact in Georgia is that we do. And I took an oath to the Constitution. Therefore, it is my duty. It is what I'm paid to do by the taxpayers of this state. And if I do not do it well, if we don't have a reliable grid, if things aren't the way that it should be, then I'll get sent home, Kevin. They will pick someone else. So first and foremost, I have to do my job. And all the extra stuff that I'm adding on, that I'm layering on, whether it's fighting human trafficking with the Unholy Tour, speaking to young people, creating the Clean Energy Roadshow, doing the Sustainability Awards across Georgia, speaking at, Georgia Right to Life event, or, preaching on Sunday in churches. All of that's extra. And that really I really have to be doing the main job first. And so I do try to have that balance in there where I'm prioritizing what I've been hired to do and doing, trying to do it well, trying to apply God's wisdom, even to energy regulation. And I think there are wise ways to do this. I think there are foolish ways to do it. But but let's add these other things. And I often have sometimes even colleagues say, why are you doing this stuff? Why are you
Mm,
doing this extra stuff? And when it comes to human trafficking, I say because it's a blight on our state, and I think we all should be doing something. So I'm
mhm,
pretty bold on some of the other things that I'm doing. I try to explain, to these officials that, look, this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I believe in. This is something I want to help educate consumers on. This is what I see as an economic trend. And so, you try to do it in an unhaughty way. If there's anything I've learned, a gentle answer turns away wrath. That's what Proverbs says. And I would say that is the number one biblical principle I
mm,
apply on a weekly basis, is that a gentle answer turns away wrath. It's so easy to get upset or to be offended, or when someone blames you for something that's not your fault, for you to just go after them or not return their call or not deal with it. And you just have to, in public service, as I'm defining it, you must engage with people. You
mm.
must let them vent. You must deal with them in a congenial way, and you got to let them have their say, and then help them as best you can. And people appreciate that. They appreciate the access. They appreciate the help. Sometimes you can fix their problem. Sometimes you can't.
Understood. Dr. Shama makes a couple of comments in agreement with you about family. That absolutely right. We cannot compromise, and also family is our first priority. And by the way, Dr. Shama lives that. She's got a couple of her kids that are on LinkedIn now that are fascinating to engage with, and obviously have grown um, in some wisdom even as youngsters under her leadership. And Mario makes a comment. He says, as global leaders, we need to align in act of solidarity, kindness, and love to protect the population and Mother Earth and the universe. We need to mobilize. And one of the things that I wanted to just kind of bring out, and again, this is something I have observed you do and so appreciate it, is that when you look at a problem, or when we look at a problem, we should not first look at other um, uh, people or other entities. First, we should ask ourselves, is this something that I can do or I should take some responsibility for and act on it? And then, if that's not the case, then how can I help others? And then ultimately, you do use your position in a government um, uh, position to help as well. But I think part of what we're missing, the wisdom we're missing, is personal responsibility to be a part of solutions ourselves before we look to others to drive those solutions. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I get calls from people all the time asking me to help with things that aren't directly related to my office. And my general rule, and my assistant follows this rule as well, is that we are going to try to help them in some way. So it may be getting someone else on the phone and connecting them to them. It may be introducing them to a possible solution holder by email or text. But the answer is never, I'm sorry, that's not my job. I can't help you. So I think it is incumbent on servant leaders to look for solutions and to
Mm,
be a part of the solution. And granted, I can't wave a magic wand and fix every single thing. But when someone calls me and their power's out, or they've had a dispute with their utility over a bill, or a rate plan, whatever it it might be, those are directly related, but I'll have people call me with insurance related issues, right? Things that I don't, and that I don't regulate, but 4 or 5 times a year, I will introduce them to the insurance commissioner or a high ranking customer service person over at the insurance department in an effort to help them, to get to a solution. Because what I want people in my state to think and believe is that if I have a problem and I can't figure anything else out, I can call Tim Echols and he will help direct me towards a solution. That's that conclusion that I want them to come to. And in order for them to come to that conclusion, I must deliver that kind of help to them. And so it's very important for me as people reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, it doesn't matter. I'm on every platform. I'm trolling, my inboxes, and I'm trolling my tags because people like the man from Nigeria over the weekend. I have nothing to do with diesel mechanics, but this is something he feels that he's to do. And I took a few minutes over the weekend to send him some websites from diesel companies that might provide him with a scholarship if he came over on some kind of educational visa. So I don't know if it'll work out. I don't work in immigration. I don't work for the State Department, but it doesn't matter. He asked me for help, and I need to provide him some kind of help.
And that goes to your definite servant's heart and your servant leadership. And again, qualities that I appreciate and that we're blessed to have you in Georgia using. And again, I think a key component here is to make sure that we don't say it's not my job. It may not be your job, but to do that to people is demeaning, discouraging. Whereas offering, and I appreciate you've even done this with me, offering this connection, a contact, that alone says, it encourages me not to give up and encourages to move forward. And the more that each of us can do that in our own world, things become very different in a very positive sense just by not pushing things off because it's not in our requirements, if you will. And, we just functioning in what we're required to do is not a wise way to approach things. And I appreciate that you have demonstrated that, continue to demonstrate that as we go along. And I did want to share, Paul made a comment, and Paul, I apologize, I'm trying to scroll back through, but he made the comment. I'm sorry, not not Paul, but rather Cena, and I did find it. And this is a great question that any of us should ask at any time, and is, am I living my life? Keywords, living, definitely, but more importantly, my life, the life that we're intended to live. You talk about seeking God's will. I think that is such a key question as we do seek wisdom. What am I designed to do? What is my purpose? Not what everybody else's is. We read great books and a lot of good information, but that's not the ticket. The ticket is living who we're supposed to live. Welcome, Erica. Glad to have you with us. So, Tim, we're running up against the clock, so I would like to give you a chance to make a final comment, and then we will close out.
Yeah, just thank you to everyone. I see my friend Paul Wirtz on the call, and others for seeking wisdom. Right, that's where it begins. You seek it, and God will meet you. He'll provide you wisdom, in your daily decisions that you're that you're trying to make, and he wants us to make good decisions. He wants us to be kind and serve others, as several have mentioned today. So I would ask everyone's prayers for myself as I try to do this job and more. And I certainly want to honor God in everything that I'm doing. And I thank you, Kevin, for having me on with your friends today.
Sure. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. And folks, join us again next week. We'll be back on Monday morning, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Look forward to it. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. And your comments and questions are all appreciated. The engagement makes this much better than if it's just Tim and I sitting here talking, because I know we could fill up an hour easy chatting. And so thanks. God bless each of you. Have an amazing week. Come back and see us on Monday. Thanks. Thanks, Tim. Take care, everyone.